Welcome to the Singapore math training video. We're going to just talk about the basics of Singapore, and then during Family Education Week for new families, we'll do a workshop so that we can actually practice some of the techniques, and hopefully they'll make more sense as you can see them and feel them and use them. So I wanted to just briefly talk about why we chose Singapore. It is a language-based program, meaning that they progressively show math in a way that like a new language. So you start with concrete, and then you'll see pictorial, different picture representations, and then and only then do you go to the abstract. So you might start concrete with manipulatives, and we'll look at some of those. And then see the concept in pictures in your book, in your textbook and workbook, and then go to abstract, so the number sentence. And this is especially helpful for kids to deeper learn foundational concepts. I just realized I didn't introduce myself, so I should probably do that before we get any farther. My name's Kim Nielsen, and I have been at Karis from the beginning and looking at curriculum and training and resources for our classrooms. So that's kind of why you're getting me. I teach logic and rhetoric science, so that is my background, but I have been doing Singapore math from even before the beginning of Karis, as my kids entered kindergarten and beyond. I've done Singapore through with my own children and in some of the classrooms as well. I have loved the program because again, the focus is on mastery. And I think this works really well for classical education, that it's working on a cumulative building up of skills and concepts. And so they call it a spiral review, but you will see certain concepts each year. So for instance, like you'll see number sense, even beginning in kindergarten. And then at the beginning of first grade, it will just kind of add on to that concept of number sense, again in second, again in third. And so it just builds upon the foundation from year to year. And so that's why we say it's a cumulative mastery. It's not, hey, learn this concept in third grade and then don't use it. It's really trying to use what you know and build upon that through the levels. There's a pretty high level of expectation and a high level of utilization of math skills, and I'll show you how they do that. But again, hopefully there's enough for all levels of math that we're really trying to train kids into how to think through math instead of just plug numbers in. I, who am a visual learner, have really loved that it is highly visual. The textbooks are full of color and pictures. There's really relatively little clutter and distracting text and pictures in the book. And I think that makes them really easy to use, and teacher and parent friendly. There are a lot of different resources available with Singapore. And so sometimes, again, I'll show you what we use at Karis, but there are a lot of different resources available either for extra help or extra challenge that are pretty easy for parents to use. Okay, again, what I loved most was this laying a strong foundation. And I love this when I've talked to different mathematicians and people who have a math background, and I would say think mathematically, I can see that this is the concept that they're really trying, that they do naturally. And so I've loved that Singapore is really trying to teach these concepts that, again, some people do naturally. Many of us, if we're not math minded, need to learn the concepts and learn this art. And so again, you can see the first is really a number sense. And so using, just like we talked about before, it uses concrete activities, number bonding, and what's called subitizing. And so this is really just playing with numbers. So in kindergarten, again, the kids even learn these key concepts of number bonding, so breaking numbers apart and showing their connections together. And then we use a 10 frame. And so if we can group numbers into tens and then eventually hundreds and thousands, or in decimals lower, right? Tenths and hundredths. If I can group them together, it's easier to break them apart and move them and understand them. And so we kind of constantly are anchoring towards that 10. And so you'll see this in different manipulatives and with some concrete activities and pictures, that they're building this strong foundation. And then on top of that, we will do place value, mental math, how to visualize math. We've talked about this spiral review of concepts and how many different multiple representations. So it's not just a number sentence, it's pictures, it's using it with your hands, it's a lot of word problems. So the ultimate goal is mathematical understanding. Again, we don't want our kids just to kind of plug and play, but we really want them to understand what they're doing. Let me go back. There's this concept of math talk. And again, as I've talked to different mathematicians and math teachers over the year, this concept of being able to talk math, just like we narrate in language arts and we summarize what we've learned, talking math talk and speaking it out loud is really essential for our students' love of math and their understanding of math. And so more that you can do in your satellite classroom, this is one of the things that I would encourage you as a family. I know when my kids were little, my mathematically minded kids always wanted in the car to play with numbers. And so we would double. And so we would go 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, and on and on and on. And really to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. We would get really high over the years, but they just loved playing with numbers and talking about numbers as you're measuring things, as you're in the kitchen, as you're doing projects. And so I'd really encourage you, that is one thing that you can do as a co-teacher to set your child up for success. Some of us don't love or feel secure in math. And so we can inadvertently pass that on to our children as we say things like, oh, I was never good at math either, or, oh, I've never used that. And so I'd really caution you to not let your maybe feelings or insecurities or experience cloud what your children are getting. Some other ways that you can talk about math is just as you're doing problems to say things like, how did you solve that? How did you know that was correct? Can you solve it another way? So showing that the correct answer isn't the main goal or the lowest level or the highest level goal, maybe. That's great, but I really want to think mathematically and give them skills. And so maybe solving it a different way helps hone a different skill in solving the same problem, right? Other questions might be, can you build a model? Can you use numbers and symbols to explain your model? Is that the best or most efficient way to solve that? Right? And you're going to see in Singapore, we'll solve things in different ways and in multiple representations and ways. And so you could say, hey, is there a more efficient way to do that? Is your answer reasonable? Okay, so even if the answer is incorrect or correct, like why, right? Explain to me. Do you agree or disagree with your partner's answer? So again, that might be something in a classroom that we might say as we're thinking through math together. Okay, we are going to use some of these during our workshop, but I just wanted to kind of show you some manipulatives that you'll see in the program. So we'll use manipulatives. You'll also see pictures of these in that pictorial representation. So place value manipulatives, we really will use these all the way through, but especially in the younger grades. And so you can see there's not only just ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands place value and seeing that in different ways. This is a place value mat at the top. You will see the unicubes that we could use for both whole numbers and for decimals. And this is just like a decimal chart. And so again, we will use them both for whole numbers, but also part numbers or decimals and fractions as well. Here's example of the place value mat and using that with coins. You will see a base 10 and we will use that. I will show you that when we do our workshop. And again, we can do these charts both whole part and decimal parts and use really the same manipulatives and we'll just describe them in different ways. Instead of this big cube being your thousands, that can be your one. And then as we break things up, again, we can see the hundredths, tenths, and thousandths. Okay, we will also go through computation strategies. So with Singapore, again, I want to subitize and then put things back together. I want to break numbers apart so that they're more easily utilized and I can do them in my head. And I can also understand what I'm actually doing. And so we're going to use some different computation strategies. And again, we'll talk about this and do them in our workshop. But we'll use number bonds and the base 10 system as you've seen. There's some addition and subtraction as well as multiplication and division strategies of how to do even relatively large numbers in your head and understand what you're doing. And then we will also use some visual models for adding fractions. So I just want to show you what a number bond is before our workshop. Some of you have probably used these before or seen them, but again, it's a really essential foundation in being able to compose and decompose or subitize numbers. So you always start with a whole and then you show that in its parts. Now, a whole number 10 can have many different kinds of parts, right? And so I can do a 1 and a 9, I can do a 0 and a 10 as its parts, a 5 and a 5. And so we'll work through, even starting in kindergarten, and especially in first grade, on building those number bonds. And that's going to help us with some of those computation strategies later on. This is an example of, again, that we'll work through in the workshop. I just wanted to show you, again, addition with number bonds. We'll use that same thing for subtraction and base 10s, okay? And so those are some of the strategies that we're going to use and practice in our workshop. The other thing that's really essential in Singapore curriculum is mental math. And so I would say that Singapore has not been super strong in memorizing math facts. And so we've added some of those into our classroom. And so you'll see that either using rainbow facts, doing time tests and repetitive things in the classroom so kids really memorize these math facts. And that way, instead of just using all the strategies of mental math, they also have the math facts involved to make it quicker and more efficient. And so some of the strategies that you'll see is that, again, the number bonds and tens in kindergarten, moving to number bonds, adding those number bonds, doing math facts. Second through fourth, we're not using Moby Max anymore to master those 4 operations, although that's a great program to use at home if you want to and need it. but we have added kind of more, we went back to, instead of it being an electronic form, really doing the paper and pencil math facts. And so we've kind of systematized how we do mastery of our 4 operations in K through 6th grade. Really, by the time they're out of grammar school, we want those very strong, so that as they're getting more complicated math, they're not having to go 10 plus 8 is, that's an easy one, but you get the meaning, or that I don't have to think 5 times 6 is, right? So if I can get those math facts so that they're second nature, that's really going to help as they go into algebra skills and even geometry and more complicated math. And so as you're learning about this mental math part of the curriculum, there will be different techniques that they'll do. And again, it's really emphasis on the place value and the distributive properties. And so that, again, is kind of those number bonds and how numbers can be broken apart and used. And so, for instance, if I don't know what 6 times 7 it is, if I don't know that that's 42, right, I can maybe know that 6 times 3 is 21. Maybe I've already memorized that. And I also know that a 6 is made up of 3 times 2. So now I just have to double the 21, 42, right? And so again, not that they will eventually just memorize 6 times 7, but mental math is really a way to break apart and distribute properties so that maybe if I have 29 times 97, which I would always use my calculator for, I can actually figure that out, right? And so we'll start with what is known. Again, we talked about this in Singapore curriculum, and this is a classical pedagogy and classical principle, is start with what's known, and then I step by step can figure out what's unknown. And so it's this thought process that's as important as the actual skill. And so mental math will use certain things, and we'll teach these is like a left to right computation and questioning with rearranging. And so again, we'll walk through these and give some examples of these in our workshop. Here's an example, kind of like we did before, and you can see how number bonding, decomposing numbers, breaking them apart, helps them to arrive at an answer even if you don't have it memorized. Here's an example of, again, 5s, right? That's harder, but once we have 10s down, which is relatively easy, I know that 5 is just half of 10. And so again, mentally, it's easier to do 62 times 5 is 310. Okay, and there's different ways to do that, right? I could do 5 times 60 and then 5 times 10, or I can do 5 times 10 and just break it in half. Okay, so that's kind of a mental math strategy. So we've got really a number sense, we've got mental math. We'll do these examples when we're in the workshop. And then the last is really not the last, but another main kind of triad or part of the curriculum is word problems. And we're going to use model drawing for word problems. And so a lot of you probably had to do word problems in your years of doing math in school. Model drawing is a way to start with the concrete, go to the pictorial, and give the abstract. It's also a way to kind of learn some strategies in grammar school that you're going to continue in logic and rhetoric years. And so it really bridges into algebra and figuring out unknowns. And really that's math, right? That's a real life word problem, is I have an unknown that I have to do, and I have to start with what I know and move to the unknown. And so we're going to create units to create this bridge to the unknown quantity. And again, we're going to start basic, and sometimes your kids already know the answer, right? But we're teaching them a tool. This model drawing is a tool, so that even if they know the answer, they're getting this process down so that they can then use the tool for more difficult problems when they don't know what to do. Okay. So again, we will practice model drawing when we're in our workshop and do this in groups, but here's kind of a step-by-step. And we do want you, again, when you're learning a tool, it's important to learn the tool first, right before I modify. And so it's always important to read the problem, and then you're going to identify the knowns, right? So I'm going to identify what are the variables? What's the who? What's the what, right? What do I know? You're going to draw a unit bar to model each of these variables. And then I love this, chunk the problem. Okay, so I'm going to figure out what can I put together and how can I adjust my unit bars to match that information. And I'm going to kind of fill in what is my question. Okay, so I'm going to kind of draw what am I actually looking for. Work out the computation. And then this is important. Write, oh, you can't see that. Write a complete sentence to answer the question. Now, our kids really don't like to do this. In the younger grades, they have in the book a complete sentence and you fill in the blank. But what I always try to say is this is still communication, right? Math is still a language. And what I'm really trying to do is communicate. And so I want to communicate effectively. And if I just write a number and circle it, and you can't follow my work, and you can't really understand what I'm answering, that's not very good communication, right? And so we're trying to teach kids that this is a language and communication is important, okay? And so that's really why we're trying to write a complete sentence to answer the question. I also want to see that they are answering the correct question, okay? Oops, sorry. Okay. Oops, I got too far. Okay, so this is just an example. And again, we will go through this during our workshop. We'll go through some other concepts, but you can kind of see these units. And so you would read this problem together. Jake has 3 times as much money as Mike. Jake and Mike have $120 altogether. Find the amount of money Jake has, right? And so that can seem like, what am I actually doing? What do I need to know? And so again, in that, they're going to write this question. What am I actually looking for? Jake has blank money, right? That's what I'm looking for. So that's step number 2. Step 3 was the who or the what. So I know Jake has 3 times as much money as Mike. So how can I pictorially represent that? I'm going to use these bars, right? So Mike has kind of 1 bar, and then Jake has 3 times, so I can do 3 bars, okay? And then, but I want to know just, so I know how much they also have together, right? So I don't know how much Mike has, and I don't know how much Jake has, but I know this together, they have $120. But what I'm looking for is this question, what does Jake have? Okay, so that's kind of the pictorial, okay? And then, so I draw the unit bars, I kind of chunked things together to try and see. Now I'm ready to compute, okay? And so I can see I've got 4 units, and my 4 units is equal to 120. Okay, so I have a whole, then I'm dividing that into 4 parts. So I've got my division sentence, I've got my answer, but that is, see, this is what's important. What am I actually looking for? Am I looking for 1 unit? No, I'm actually not looking. That tells me how much Mike has. I'm looking how much Jake has. So this is actually a 2-step problem. I also have to do 3 times 30 is $90. Okay, so then I go back and I say Jake has $90. it sounds weird to say Jake has $90 money. Not a very good sentence. So you could just say dollars, period. Okay. So I hope that gives you just a really brief understanding. Again, we'll go through and give examples of what maybe you might see starting up to what do we do when they're a little more complicated. Can I do fractions? Can I do decimals using model drawing and things like that? Okay, so again, when you're doing structure, you always look at the problem, look at the model drawing. Okay, this is kind of a pictorial example from your book. I'm going to show the work, and I want to do this as systematically as possible. So it's not like up in a little margin and off to the side and scribbled around, right? We're trying to teach a thought process and a communication. Okay. And so I want to show my work neatly and then answer written in a sentence. So you can see this is written in a sentence at the bottom. Okay. And so you will see this in your books in this kind of flow. Hopefully classroom teachers will be requiring your students to show your work. You can emphasize that as co-teachers and really emphasize like it's not just important. Some kids will be able to be like, oh, 72, right? That was one of my sons. And I was like, ugh, I don't know that yet, right? But we go through the process because I would re-emphasize it's about how do you communicate your answer, check your answer, and describe your answer to someone. It's also about gaining the tools so that you can do more difficult problems. Okay. All right. Um, so we'll kind of end with what does this kind of look like at Karis? What are the rhythms in Singapore math? And so we like to start with like maybe some mental math or some problems. Some teachers will do this during homeroom and do some challenge problems or things to like think mathematically, warm-ups. Mental math might be there are 4 operations and the time tests. So again, trying to start with kind of some warm up and getting my brain to think mathematically with mental math or time tests and math review. There's usually a teacher directed lesson, some sort of activity oftentimes, and then can we get them problem solving, thinking through the concept. Independent practice would be like your workbooks. And so we in the younger grades, definitely as you're moving forward, many of you are proficient in math and in the 4 operations and feel comfortable doing, basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, things like that, even basic fractions and decimals. And so you will see sometimes in the satellite classroom, there will be a lesson or concept to teach as well. We recommend home instructor guides or teacher workbooks. Those are optional, but if you are new at the program or if you're just not super strong with math skills, I highly recommend getting those extra resources. It will help you understand what you're doing. It will also help you feel confident in checking answers or walking through different kinds of problems with your student. I loved math. I have, took calculus through college, but even some of the word problems, I was like, ooh, let me look at my home instructor guide and just check, right? So some of them get quite challenging, and I really liked having those extra resources to just double check myself or give me more ideas of how to represent something or talk through something. You will find that as the kids, even 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, actually, we're not using this in 6th grade. We're kind of using a modified Singapore and taking other concepts from other curriculum. So we've kind of created our own 6th grade curriculum. But K through 5, you will find in the kind of middle upper grades, we will try to take more and more of teaching the concepts in the central classroom, and then you're emphasizing helping your child do independent practice, helping your child kind of gain mastery over those concepts in the satellite classrooms. The kindergarten curriculum, we start actually with B. So there's always an A and a B, and that's kind of like semester 1 and semester 2. And it gives a little more flexibility for kids who need to start different places. And so we found that kindergarten A, that first semester of kindergarten, is pretty basic concepts. And it was a pretty expensive curriculum to buy for what we felt like some of the things just need review and emphasis. It's a lot of colors and numbers and shapes. And so we put together our own kind of spiral bound kindergarten workbook instead of having you purchase that, just to save money and to be able to go at a pace that our kindergarten teachers have felt like was more helpful. And then we jump into kindergarten, the curriculum B, or that second semester, because it's got that number bonding. It's now kind of going into the foundation of the curriculum. We've also added, again, just so that there's more math talk, so that there's more activities and games and actually gaining mastery over the concepts. We've added a curriculum called Math with Confidence that is has a lot of Singapore concepts. It also has a lot of extra activities and even literature, living books that go with it. And so we've added that into our Fridays K-4. And so you won't need to purchase that curriculum. You might not even see that. I just wanted to let you know that's kind of what our classroom teachers are using on Fridays to kind of help build the concepts and practice and do math and teach kind of mastery in fun and engaging ways. Your satellite classrooms, again, some things that you can do, using Math Talk Daily, asking questions, asking them to show their work, and walking through those tools that we'll go through in our workshop of mental math tools and word problems, emphasizing kind of that structure, I think will really help. There's the process of thinking through math. Practice math facts. You can play games with them. You can do fun quizzing. You can do them while you're out and about, in the car. We did a lot in the car, right? But play games, make them fun, but really practice those, because having them down till they're just second nature is really going to help the children as they get further into math. Make a habit of using the correct form, like I said, of word problems. It's okay if they already know the answer. Go back, okay, let's write the answer down. Show me how you got there. Let's go through this process so you can show me, right? Communicate. And again, I would often say, I know you know that answer. You're super sharp to get that right away. Let's walk through these tools so that it can bless you later on when you don't know right away. You are building an academic foundation, but also this emotional foundation. Math is one of those that for some people, it's just difficult, right? And there's a satisfaction in gaining mastery over difficult things and walking through and persevering over difficult things. So math is not that for everybody, but I have found over the years that this is one of those areas that for some kids it's just kind of hard. And so really encouraging them that this is not just academic skills, this is character skills. It's really a spiritual, I would say, not just emotional formation, but really a spiritual formation of endurance and perseverance and kind of going for the joy set before you and the satisfaction of doing a job well done and enduring even when something's difficult. Encourage your child to ask for help when needed. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. Ask for help when needed. You can ask another co-teacher, maybe a mentor. You can ask your classroom teacher or classroom teaching assistant, or grab those of us who have been at this school for a long time, and let's be a community where we can come alongside one another. Mathematicians see their work is to play with numbers. And I love that. With certain boundaries that are the laws of mathematics. So there are boundaries that are clearly defined, but within that, there's these areas of freedom. And so I would encourage students to understand the principles at work so they can work more freely with numbers. And again, boundaries, my husband likes to say, boundaries bring freedom, right? And so this is about not just the right answer, but freedom and joy in the process. So focus on the why, not the how. Develop a strong number sense and a depth of understanding and mastery. So we're going to use base 10s, number bonds, place value, and these computation strategies to do that. We're going to work concrete to pictorial to abstract. And then we're going to apply and seek to apply math easily and readily. So mental math strategies and word problems with number or with model drawing. Here, and again, this will be posted so you can see these resources. There's math sprints, word problems, intensive practice, extra practice books. Singapore has a lot of leveled books, and you are free to use those. And if your kid if your child is either struggling or just loves math and wants more, those are some different resources. Here's some, there's online math learning, and there are lots of great examples and videos per grade level. And so if you're wondering how to teach something or what this concept is, that's a great resource to go to. MobyMax and DreamWorks both have programs to help kind of with math thought, with learning math facts, and even just math skills and thinking. There's some other fun resources, including Math Playground that, again, if you do screen time, but you want kind of educational screen time, that's kind of a fun place. It does a lot of logic games and things that kind of go with Singapore math concepts. So if you want kind of some more resources of how to teach and what the resource for actual Singapore curriculum, there's a couple there. So on that note, if you are a new family or new to grammar school, I will see you at the workshop, Singapore workshop at Few Week. Again, we will try to post examples and any resources. If you have other things that you would like to see, please just let me know and we can get those posted in documents. So otherwise, I will see you at the workshop. Thank you.